The King's Avatar for the Glory. Chapter 14 Showdown 1. Audio source, WuShowWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 14 Showdown 1. Translator, Noam Yummy. Editor, Noam Yummy. Playoffs. Here we come. With the match that had just ended, the stadium was alive with cheers. After this round of matches finished, the regular matches of Glory Professional Alliance Season 2 were officially at an end, and the team rankings for this year were set. 6 teams had already secured their spots before this round, while numbers 7 and 8 had only just slaughtered their way into these last 2 playoff spots, earning the right to compete for the Ultimate Championship. The cheers now came from the fans of these 2 teams, while the members of these 2 teams each gathered into a group hug on stage. At this time, Team Tyranny's captain Han Wenqing also stood, and let out a long breath. "We won." He turned to look at his gleefully celebrating teammates. But when these grinning teammates saw their captain looking toward them, they all suddenly froze, as though in a snapshot. And then they all became more subdued, their cheering no longer as raucous as before. Han Wenqing, whether in the eyes of his opponents or his teammates, was an intimidating person in both appearance and spirit. With his one glance, the members of Tyranny stopped baring their teeth and brandishing their claws like they were earlier. They high-fived and shook hands, politely congratulating each other, and then they clustered around Han Wenqing. "Captain, we won," someone said. "Yes, we won." Han Wenqing nodded. "However, this is only the start." Quote. As he spoke, he turned to look somewhere on stage. "Yes, yes, yes." The members all nodded their heads. Without looking, they knew at whom their captain was staring. Yi Chu. Yi Chu of Team Excellent Era. During last season's playoffs, Tyranny was eliminated after losing to Excellent Era. But the story of their captain Han Wenqing and Yi Chu began even before then, stretching all the way back to not long after Glory had launched and everyone was still at level 30, or so it was told. In the Glory arena, there were 2 characters with a perfect win rate. And now, anyone who knew even just a little about Glory would know these 2 characters. The Battle Mage with the title of Battle God. One Autumn Leaf, Excellent Era's captain Yi Chu. The striker with the title of King of Fighting. Desert Dust, their own captain Han Wenqing. But the Battle God had thoroughly sealed his title as a god in Season 1, knocking over powerful opponents in the playoffs and ultimately achieving the championship. Meanwhile, Desert Dust fell on the Battle God's path to godhood, seemingly unworthy of the title King of Fighting. Some fans would joke that he was the king of fighting, of hand-to-hand combat, so when he met someone who didn't use fists, he was not their king. In the end, the title of Battle God was more sweeping, with no rivals beneath the sun. Han Wenqing didn't care about jokes like that. But this opponent, Yi Chu, everyone in Tyranny knew that their captain cared very much about him. Their playoff journey last season had been terminated by Yi Chu in the Excellent Era he led. Desert Dust's old perfect win record in the early days of the Glory game had also been broken by one Autumn Leaf. After that, in-game or in offline Glory matches, the 2 of them had faced off against each other in countless battles, all the way until the Glory Alliance was formed. In this completely professional competitive Glory setting, this pair of old foes met once again. But on stage, everyone could only see Han Wenqing. Yi Chu, strangely, never revealed his face, and refused all photos. These players generally could only see him in abrupt and coincidental meetings in some random places before or after matches. No one knew why Yi Chu insisted on doing this. In the eyes of Tyranny, who held a very hostile attitude toward him, his purposefully mysterious position was particularly disgusting. At this moment, for example, as Han Wenqing stared toward Excellent Era, everyone knew that Yi Chu wouldn't appear over there. Everyone could only imagine his presence. But Han Wenqing still stubbornly stared for a long while before finally turning his head. "Let's go," he said. Tyranny's players followed behind him, waving their hands to acknowledge the crowd as they exited the stadium floor. But as soon as they entered the player passageway, they caught the scent of cigarette smoke drifting toward them. "Yi Chu!" Han Wenqing, without even seeing the person, was already shouting. At this time, most players were still on stage. No one aside from Yi Chu would run down here and smoke in the passageway like this. Up AEAD, someone answered, and everyone walked closer to look. "Wasn't this Yi Chu? Congratulations on entering the playoffs," Yi Chu said. But this was coming from someone who had secured a playoff spot a full 3 rounds earlier, and was first place on the points leaderboard at the end of the regular season. No matter how you listen, this sentence seemed to contain a trace of mockery. But no one said anything. Everyone on Team Tyranny looked toward their captain. Sometimes they thought, if they didn't play Glory and instead went to a real-life PK, their captain could probably kill Yi Chu in 3 blows. "See you in the finals," Han Wenqing said calmly. Tyrannical. Tyranny's members were excited. They were in 7th place at the end of the season, so they were in a separate half of the playoff bracket from first place Excellent Era. If they met, it would be in the finals. And before then, both teams would have to defeat 2 opponents. Han Wenqing now completely disregarded those 2 teams, directly arranging a meeting with Yi Chu at the finals. For a team that had only just secured 7th place after this round, this kind of tone was a bit arrogant. But Tyranny's members didn't feel this way, because this was their captain. After he said this sentence, everyone felt that they were already standing on the final stage, prepared to smash this despicable guy in front of them. "So brash. That's not too good, is it?" the despicable guy said, laughing. "See you then," Han Wenqing answered with certainty, and then he walked right past Yi Chu, the rest of the team following closely. "Your first opponent is quite strong," Yi Chu said behind him. Han Wenqing paused in his footsteps. Tyranny was 7th, so their first opponent was the second-place team. 100 Blossoms, the highlight of this season, the black horse that had drawn the most attention. Even though they had ultimately been surpassed by Excellent Era, there were still many people who held high hopes for that beautiful rookie duo to earn the championship. As for Tyranny, who had only just secured a spot at 7th, far fewer people held high hopes for them. If news got out that Han Wenqing had directly disregarded 2 rounds of opponents to challenge Yi Chu at the finals, there would certainly be many people accusing him of not knowing his own strength.
But that didn't change Han Wenqing's attitude.
"Just another team that lost you," Han Wenqing said, already beginning to walk away again. Hey, but they beat you," Yi Chu called. The regular season was a rotation, so every team fought every other team. Naturally, Tyranny had fought against 100 Blossoms in the regular season early on, but they had fallen behind in points. "I've beaten you before, too," Han Wenqing said, without turning his head. The implication was, naturally, that 1 or 2 victories didn't say much. "Endgame counts too?"
said Yi Chu.
"Of course," said Han Wenqing. Whether in-game or on the professional stage, his determination to win never changed. As long as it was a battle, he would fight with everything he had. After saying this, Han Wenqing and the rest of Tyranny had already walked far away, and their silhouettes quickly vanished in the long player passageway. Yi Chu stood there alone, as though in deep thought. He even forgot about the cigarette dangling between his fingertips. If in-game counts too, then Excellent Era would be far stronger than it is now. Because we would have that guy, he thought silently. Playoffs. After a few days of rest, the Glory Season 2 playoffs officially began. The 4 matches of the first round of playoffs would occur simultaneously. Because the playoffs were elimination style, the matches were more exciting and intense, and they received more attention than the regular season matches. For the first round of the playoff matches, the doors opened 2 hours beforehand, and the seats were rapidly filled. No one felt the long wait was tedious. Fans of the various teams along with fans of the various players were already having contests with each other outside the stadium. The scene as a whole was lively to the breaking point. "Yi Chu is nothing. Kill him." Quote. From Blue Rain's fan section, a youth started yelling with no regard for anything else. But even his fellow fans were embarrassed to agree with this bold shout. They could only express their admiration for this youth's bravery and his love of Blue Rain. As for the Excellent Era fans, never mind whether or not they could hear this youth's lonely yell, but even if they could, it would only provoke mocking laughter. Blue Rain had made a strong showing last season, and had been a powerful opponent in everyone's eyes. But this season, Blue Rain's performance had decreased drastically. They'd only made it into 8th place with the last round of the regular season, just barely jumping onto the late bus for the playoffs. Over the course of the entire regular season, anyone could tell that Blue Rain's strength was slipping. Their core player, team captain Wei Chen, could not replicate the strength he'd shown in Season 1. His condition had been plummeting, bringing Blue Rain's scores along with it, and they'd almost failed to make it into the playoffs entirely. Everyone knew the reason. This was a type of inevitable decline. Everyone felt pity for Blue Rain, and naturally they didn't have much faith in their strength. And now, in the first round of the playoffs, they met Excellent Era. Even though 100 Blossoms had been more eye-catching this season, the number one of the regular season was still Excellent Era. For everyone that had made it into the playoffs, the team to defeat was Excellent Era. WuxiaWorldAudio.com. When Blue Rain became Excellent Era's first-round opponent, in that moment, no one had any expectations for Blue Rain. Even Blue Rain's own fans treated the hope they held in their hearts as a miracle. Excellent Era was truly too strong. To no one's surprise, Blue Rain lost. "This is only the first game. There are still 2 more." The youth shouted in the stands, but not too many people could hear. The playoffs were best of 3 games, so Blue Rain still had a chance of making a comeback. But after seeing their performance in the first game, people truly had no more hope toward Blue Rain. The aged Swaxar had no way of stopping the battle god at his peak. As for the other first games of the first round, one result that surprised the viewers was that 100 Blossoms lost their first game to Tyranny. As this was the first game, some commentators said things like, "The rhythm of the playoffs is different from the regular season. They still need to grow accustomed to it. This loss can let them realize early on the difference of the playoffs and figure out the adjustments they need to make. Better to lose now than lose in the finals. They're smart players. They'll figure it out for sure." From all of these comments, it could be seen that 100 Blossoms fans were still relaxed even after this loss. As they analyzed the reasons why 100 Blossoms might have lost, their belief in the team's subsequent victories were certain. No one paid too much attention to this setback, and no one pointed out Tyranny's strength. Because last season Tyranny had been eliminated in the first round of playoffs. Because this season Tyranny was only at 7th place. They seemed to be a cannon fodder team that always vacationed in the playoffs for one round. But no one seemed to notice that even if Tyranny had been cannon fodder in last season's playoffs, they had been cannon fodder to the championship team Excellent Era. If not for Excellent Era, what position would Tyranny have obtained? No one had thought about this possibility. 3 days later, the second game of the first round of playoffs began. Which teams would advance to the next round of playoffs after today? Everyone eagerly awaited the results. This game would determine the fates of several teams. In the prep rooms of each team, the atmosphere was much more serious and tense than it had been the previous game. "Everyone relax. As long as we perform at our skill level, we can defeat our opponents for sure." Quote. In 100 Blossoms prep room, Captain Sun Zheping said this to his teammates. Last game, 100 Blossoms had indeed experienced some problems. Because of the elimination nature of playoffs, they had been too worried about the outcome during the match. They couldn't relax properly, and ultimately fell to Tyranny. And now, facing the pressure of the knowledge that if they lost this game they would be directly eliminated, the situation that 100 Blossoms faced was much more dire. But after these 3 days of adjustment, the team members' mental conditions had stabilized. Just treat this like a normal match. These were the most common words said amongst the team members these past 3 days, and finally, the nervous attitude gradually dissipated. And now, as they were about to go on stage, Sun Zheping reminded everyone one last time. Understood. Everyone nodded. Treat this like normal. Quote. Another person repeated this phrase that had been emphasized these 3 days. And then, head out. When they walked out of the prep room, their opponent happened to be heading out at the same time. From the prep room across the hall, Tyranny's captain Han Wenqing led his team, walking out. Hello, Captain Han, Sun Zheping greeted him. Everyone had met each other during the regular season. Some people said that his battle style was somewhat similar to that of Han Wenqing, and Sun Zheping himself couldn't deny this completely. Indeed, Sun Zheping had known for a while now that his preferred style had some points of similarity with the courageous and ferocious strength demonstrated by Han Wenqing. Han Wenqing was also a senior to which Sun Zheping had paid attention from the very start. Hello. Han Wenqing nodded toward him and accepted the right hand that Sun Zheping extended. They shook. Today, we'll be the ones to win, Sun Zheping said as he shook his hand. Han Wenqing smiled. It's still too early for you, he said, releasing Sun Zheping. He turned to lead his teammates on stage. See you on stage. Without turning around, he waved toward Sun Zheping and the rest of 100 Blossoms. Let's go. Don't lose to them, Sun Zheping said to the teammates behind him. Yes. Everyone answered. Zhang Jiali went further, raising his right hand and pointing a finger gun toward Tyranny. Bang. Quote. He mimed firing a shot, earning laughter from his teammates. Let's go. He blew imaginary smoke from the gun and pretended to holster it. Let's go. The team immediately gave an answering shout, and they headed out to the stage and chapter.
The King's Avatar for the Glory, Chapter 15 Showdown 2, Audio Source, Wuxia Chapter 15, Showdown 2. Translator, Nomyami Editor, Nomyami. 100 Blossoms vs. Tyranny. This was the match that received the most attention this round. Everyone who looked favorably upon 100 Blossoms wondered how they would make their comeback. But the fans of the various teams would of course pay attention to their own team's match first and foremost. Compared to the first game, Blue Rain's audience section was much less crowded today. Beat Yichu. Quote. But in the audience area, there was still a youth hollering with all his might. The audience laughed, giving sympathetic glances toward this youth. Most of those who had watched the first game live recognized this youth. Apparently he was called Huang Shaoshan, a member of Blue Rain's Trarang camp, the self-proclaimed future core of Blue Rain. They were just the words of a child, so everyone simply laughed. Huang Shaoshan's passionate and unwavering support toward Team Blue Rain meant that they had no way of hating this youth. The other youth with him seemed much quieter. He wasn't jumping around or shouting. He carried a leather notebook with him, and would frequently write in it over the course of a match. Apparently he was also from Blue Rain's Trarang camp called Yuanzhu or something. And he paid closer attention to the match than anyone. Occasionally, a fellow audience member wanted to say something to him, but it was as though his ears were deaf. He was entirely immersed in the match, and so, no one else bothered him. Today, Huang Shaoshan still cheered on Blue Rain with boundless energy. And Yu Wenzu's mood seemed to be much more serious than it had been last game. He was probably thinking about the possibility that Blue Rain would be eliminated, thought the fans, and they couldn't help but feel pity for this Yu Wenzu with his grave expression. They'd all win. Quote, one young woman sitting next to Yu Wenzhou said this to him, hoping to lift the upset expression from this child's face. Yu Wenzhou glanced at her, and didn't say anything. Although it'll be very difficult. The woman added. He was only a child, but that didn't mean that his glory skill was low, especially since someone had already said he was from Blue Rain's training camp. The child was certainly aware of the difficulty, so the woman voluntarily pointed it out. Yes, it'll be very difficult, said Yu Wenzhou. Of course, the woman didn't know, Yu Wenzhou's judgment was far clearer than she imagined. If they wanted to win this match, it would be very difficult, extremely difficult. There was only one possibility. The opponent had to make a mistake, a grave mistake, a fatal mistake. Aside from that, Yu Wenzhou truly could not think of any other way they could win. There was already such a disparity between Yichu's strength and Blue Rain. Unless he himself made a mistake, there was no way for Blue Rain to create any sort of opportunity. Would Yichu mess up? Yu Wenzhou studied all of the match data he could find on Yichu. Yichu was human, and no human was infallible. But Yichu could discover his own mistakes a step ahead of his opponent. Before his opponent could take advantage of an opening caused by a blunder, he would have already rushed to cover it. Many times, the opponent didn't even have the chance to see Yichu's opening in the first place. To do this to this extent, he could be called invulnerable. Yu Wenzhou tried to imagine how to lead Yichu to make a mistake, but he quickly discarded that train of thought. All-around technique, superb awareness, thorough experience, nimble reactions, shocking hand speed. The more Yu Wenzhou studied Yichu, the more frightening this player seemed. Yu Wenzhou never could have imagined that a player like Yichu could exist, a being so perfect, who would never expose any holes. To hope for such a person to make a mistake. Yu Wenzhou figured that only poison or such outside techniques would work. Of course, he couldn't do that. And so, Yichu was unstoppable. And so, Blue Rain would lose. Yu Wenzhou had already predicted the outcome of this match in advance. Carrying this mood, he watched from the audience. And ultimately, the end result was as expected. Blue Rain lost, miserably. Like sweeping away dead branches, Yichu and Excellent Hero defeated him. Of the 4 concurrent playoffs matches, this one had ended the fastest. Excellent Hero was the first team to enter the semi-finals, but their celebrations and those of their fans were rather calm. A victory that was within their expectations wouldn't make them particularly excited. Blue Rain's fans, although saddened, didn't find this difficult to digest. This, too, was an outcome they had long anticipated. But that lively youth still refused to give it a rest. Useless old bastard. He was yelling. Couldn't even beat Yichu. What the hell are you doing? What an obnoxious brat. The fans within earshot suddenly found him less cute than before. True, Blue Rain had lost miserably, but the team members had fought to their fullest. Especially Captain Wei Chen, who, despite his worsening condition, had brought out his full strength in this battle. His performance this match demonstrated a brilliance that was rare to see from him these days. Blue Rain had put in the effort, the opponent was simply too strong. At a time like this, blaming the hard-working players like this, it was frankly disrespectful. Kid, don't go talking nonsense, someone pointed out, none too politely. Captain Wei Chen's performance was already very good. It's thanks to his leadership that no one underestimates Blue Rain. Excellent Era had to struggle to defeat him today. There's always next season. Everyone spoke up. Huang Shaoshan didn't say any more. At his silence, everyone felt the urge to comfort him. But no one had truly grasped the essence of why this youth was so upset. Like everyone, he knew that Yi Chu, an excellent hero, was strong. He knew that the task that Wei Chen and the others had before them was an impossible one. Still, he couldn't control his desire to see them succeed, because he knew this might be Wei Chen's final time on stage. Blue Rain would have a next season, but Wei Chen would not. Even though it had never been explicitly said, many people in the team had already guessed, and senior Fang Shijing had accidentally revealed news of Wei Chen's preparations for retirement. Wei Chen would have no more shot at victory, and so this time, Huang Shaoshan had hoped beyond hope that Blue Rain would win. But in the end, they had been met with this crushing defeat in the first round. Blue Rain's players walked out of the competitor booths and acknowledged the crowd. Their Season 2 ended here. Captain Wei Chen was among them, but he had inadvertently widened the gap between himself and the rest of the team. He stood there alone, looking around, as though searching for something lost. And then, as he stood on stage, he lit a cigarette, taking a drag. Immediately, he was surrounded by security guards, and upon refusing to extinguish the cigarette, he was respectfully but firmly escorted off the stage. Surrounded by the guards, he raised a hand and waved at Blue Rain's audience section. The audience burst into laughter, but the tears were already spilling down Huang Shaoshan's cheeks. Yu Wenzu watched as Wei Chen's silhouette disappeared into the player passageway. He was lost in thought for a moment, before he refocused on the ongoing matches below. There were still 3 more matches that hadn't yet finished. The match that had attracted the most attention was currently at its fiercest. 100 Blossoms vs Tyranny. If they won, they still had one more game, one more chance at life. If they lost, their season ended here. Starting from the first game, everyone had favored 100 Blossoms. Even though they had lost the first game, people placed even higher hopes on them for the second game. But in the end, 100 Blossoms once again entered a bitter battle. The match had already reached the team competition. In the individual round and group arena earlier, both sides had won some points. The team competition would determine the final victory. And after an unusually long stalemate in this tug-of-war, 100 Blossoms supporters finally let out a sigh of relief. Just about to win, right? This is what they were all thinking. Who knew that Tyranny would be so difficult? There were also people beginning to think highly of Tyranny. What'll next round be like? It's really hard to say. Some people were also beginning to think that 100 Blossoms wasn't guaranteed to win against Tyranny. But the battle had not yet truly ended. Too many people chose to forget this point, simply because the situation on the battlefield seemed to be very clear. The large majority of characters had already fallen. From Tyranny, the only one left was their captain Han Wenking's Desert Dust. And 100 Blossoms, both halves of the dual core Blood and Blossoms, were still there. This was a partnership that embodied the idea of 1 + 1 greater than 2. And Han Wenking was by himself. Was there any question of 100 Blossoms' victory? No one thought it was still in question, including the on-stage Sun Zheping and Zhang Jiale. Having played to here, the two of them let out a breath. "Senior, you have let us win," Sun Zheping said in the match channel, very seriously. These were the polite words that were customarily said by the winners of a match. All this time, the person he had paid attention to most was Yi Chu. Although Sun Zheping recognized the strength of Han Wenking, whose style was very similar to his own, he had still overlooked him just a bit. At least, he had never put him at the same level as Yi Chu. But with this match, after the victory was decided, he placed Han Wenking at the same height as Yi Chu. "Defeating you is just as difficult as defeating Yi Chu," Sun Zheping continued in the chat. This was truly very high praise. The audience, seeing Sun Zheping acknowledge Han Wenqing to this extent, went into an uproar. No one thought that Han Wenqing was as strong as Ye Chu. Everyone felt that Sun Zheping's words here were the polite words of a victor. But Han Wenqing's reply quickly popped up. "Have I lost?" he asked. Everyone was surprised for a moment, and then they couldn't help but laugh. Technically, Han Wenqing of course hadn't lost yet, but the battle was already to this point. What chance did he have at victory? Squatting here and nitpicking the opponent's words like this stubbornness was really ungraceful. At this time, was it that difficult to type a GG and quit? Just from demeanor, he wasn't first class enough. This was what many people thought. But Han Wenqing's Desert Dust suddenly charged from a corner, flying forward, throwing a punch towards Sun Zheping's blossoming chaos. Sun Zheping was currently reviewing his own actions. He felt that his words just now had indeed been a bit disrespectful toward his opponent. Even if the situation was as clear as it was now, the battle hadn't ended yet. And then, in the blink of an eye, Desert Dust had already rushed toward him. His body flying through the air cast a shadow in his view, and Desert Dust sent a collapsing fist roaring toward Blossoming Chaos head. Retreat. Han Wenqing's sudden, powerful attack had caught Sun Zheping off guard, but he was still able to respond. Blossoming Chaos took a small jump backward, lifting his greatsword in his two hands. Wave Wheel Slasher. A low-level spellblade skill, very useful in surpassing the grab priority of super armor. WuxaWorldAudio.com. Because of this, no swordsman player would give up this skill, even if they only learned it to level 1. The mid-air Desert Dust had nowhere to run, and could only watch the magic enchantment that sparked around the sword thrusting toward him. At the same time, there was the sound of gunshots and hand grenades flew out. Zhang Jialei's reaction was no slower than Sun Zheping's. Dazzling 100 Blossoms attack had already begun. Desert Dust, unwilling to yield, was exposed to the sword edge and gun muzzle of 100 Blossoms dual stars. Those in the audience who had felt that Han Wenqing had lost the proper demeanor now felt a bit lost, as Desert Dust's posture was still as unyielding as ever. Refusing to give in until the final moment, this was Han Wenqing's style. The sword flashed. Shockwaves spun and expanded in the air. The grenades that Dazzling 100 Blossoms threw had already connecting, causing explosions everywhere. But at this moment, Desert Dust's body suddenly plummeted. How? Sun Zheping was shocked. He had clearly already been hit by Blossoming Chaos Wave Wheel Slasher, but the grab hadn't been completed. There was only one possibility. Boom. Desert Dust hit the ground, and the entire earth seemed to shake. Sun Zheping could feel that his Blossoming Chaos had bounced up slightly, a movement out of his control. 1,000-ton drop. 1,000-ton drop, a skill that could defeat the grab priority of any other skill, a skill with a powerful super armor effect. As the attack had come toward him without any delay, Desert Dust had changed his punch into this skill. Sun Zheping had been able to react to Desert Dust's sudden powerful attack earlier, but this abrupt change now left him helpless. The opponent had planned for this early on. Attacking through the sky wasn't just to seem more solemn and tragic, but was to lure Sun Zheping into using Wave Wheel Slasher. Blossoming Chaos weapon was the greatsword, with the slowest attack speed. The recovery animation for Wave Wheel Slasher would also be relatively long. Just because of that one bit of slowness, Sun Zheping had no way of keeping up with Han Wenqing's attack rhythm. The 1,000-ton drop sent Blossoming Chaos just barely off the ground, but Desert Dust's fists were already swinging. Straight punch. Desert Dust's fist charged toward Blossoming Chaos, bringing himself rushing forward as well, still maintain a close range with Blossoming Chaos. After instantly sliding through 3 body lengths, a front kick was used. On the other side, Dazzling 100 Blossoms wasn't just standing around doing nothing, but Desert Dust was moving so fast that the string of grenades thrown out all landed behind him. And because he was now in such close range with Blossoming Chaos right now, Dazzling 100 Blossoms couldn't find the target with his muzzle. Zhang Jiale was currently controlling Dazzling 100 Blossoms to find an angle, but Blossoming Chaos, kicked back by the front kick, now came crashing into Dazzling 100 Blossoms. Zhang Jiale immediately controlled Dazzling 100 Blossoms to dodge, but a silhouette flashed in his view as Han Wenking's Desert Dust had already activated Cloud Body. Like a shadow, he continued to stay close to Blossoming Chaos. But this time, Dazzling 100 Blossoms, who had only just dodged his teammate, had now entered Desert Dust's close range. Double Tiger Fist. Desert Dust's 2 fists flipped upward, one left one right, hitting both Blossoming Chaos and Dazzling 100 Blossoms at once. The entire stadium was stunned, watching as Desert Dust's hurricane-like flurry of punches and kicks landed upon the bodies of this Blossom duo. How to play 1 against 2? Han Wenking gave a simple answer: string the 2 opponents together, and attack them both. The health of the 2 characters plummeted. Relying on the kicks and punches of a striker to stick the 2 opponents at once couldn't last long. Soon enough, because of a cooldown that hadn't ended, the attacker would be stuck in a position where he couldn't continue. But this was the endgame. No one had much health remaining. This couldn't last for long, but it was enough, especially since Han Wenking was very deliberately aiming his attacks for maximum damage. After the combo finished, Blossoming Chaos stood in place unmoving. Under everyone's incredulous gazes, his health reached 0, and he slowly toppled over onto the ground. Desert Dust's attacks didn't stop, immediately heading toward Dazzling 100 Blossoms. Attacking one person, he used a different pattern. A gunner stuck close range to a striker. What would the result be? This conclusion seemed as foregone as the earlier tragic situation. But right now, no one had the time to digest this result. Everyone still hadn't woken up from the earlier foregone conclusion being completely shattered. 100 Blossoms dual core against Han Wenking alone. They were going to lose. By the time everyone began to realize this point, the result was already displayed before them, undeniably clear. Dazzling 100 Blossoms fell. Desert Dust became the last man standing. The victor was Han Wenking. The team entering the next round was Team Tyranny. End chapter.